Well, thank you so much for showing up to our talk this morning here in Amsterdam. We are going to talk to you about the naked truth about Salesforce development. No worries, nobody's going to get naked. So, as Szandor initially said, we would invite you to obviously bring on any questions that you have. We would value really like an open discussion around some of the points because we have come up with some truth and maybe you have an opinion on those as well.
And we have a motto today, The Naked Truth. And for those who don't know, The Naked Truth is a 1957 film, a dark British comedy. And why is it important for us? Because one of the main persons there publishes truths, naked truths. And the receivers of the truths want to kill the messenger. So please do not kill the messenger today. Refrain from that. Please accept that this is a mixed talk because we have an awesome business architect here, Häming, who has over 20 years, I repeat, over 20 years of experience on the Salesforce platform. So she was selling Salesforce long before I knew that Salesforce even existed.
Yeah.
And Salesforce changed a lot, and we'll be talking about that in the near future. My name is Szandor Knapp. I go by Szandor usually. I'm a technical evangelist with DIA die Interaktiven and as I-Partner in Germany. And I just recently joined the boat, so this is a first for me and the first for Caro, because Caro is first-time presenter today. And I will be presenting, and I feel a little bit we're in the wrong room, not about technology and development, but rather about the side to side between business and technology. We talked about the naked truth, and here's our show. I hope you're going to enjoy it, and let's start.
First truth of the day, there is no Salesforce development. What? So, as some of you might know, this little logo up there used to be the Salesforce logo from the very beginning. It was its slogan, no software. So how did we go from no software back in the early 2000s to Salesforce development? So we sat down and we really thought about, 10 naked truths about Salesforce development. So is there any Salesforce development? And we said, no. So we also have a little story for you, right? So I've been in this business for quite some time. And over time, you get to know the ins and outs of all the projects. You manage a lot of people. You manage a lot of tasks. So what would you do if your project manager comes up to you and he says, okay, we have this multi-cloud platform project. We need you to find a person to help us with certain tasks. Do an integration with the backend system. Who would you be looking for? So for us, it's always a question of finding the right person or finding the right fit. But when you start out in Salesforce, in the Salesforce ecosystem, sometimes it's very hard to know your place. And especially with people who are not that experienced, who come from the business angle, a developer is a developer. So at the end of the day, people try and make, like we see here, the round peg fit into the square hole.
The point is that there are plenty of developer jobs out there in the ecosystem, and we're not in 2014 anymore, but in 2022, so there has lots of things happened on the platform. And if you're not interested in, well, being disappointed because you hired the wrong person, it's very important to realize that by now there's different ways of looking at Salesforce development. So from my perspective, you can do it like we developers do, let's say it that way. So you look at the kind of things they produce, and then you categorize developers. So you have front-end developers, and as we also put in our abstract, there's lots of technologies to own and experience if you are into Salesforce development. So just to iterate a few, we have front-end with HTML and JS. We have all sorts of markup languages. So I'm not talking about Visualforce only here. I'm also talking about Marketing Cloud and all other stuffs that use some kind of markup language, right? And obviously, we have in the front end by now also lots of clicks solutions like flow interviews. And flow also take us to the back end. So we also have backend developers who do flows, who do Apex, or maybe even consume just Salesforce APIs and make a great product out of it, like MuleSoft does. And there's obviously the things that are very dear to my heart, namely DevOps. DevOps are those people who try to get the beautiful things that someone has built to the actual users. Right? Usually developers work on their own machines. And users do not work on a developer's machine. They work on a software or on their own computer, so someone is responsible to deliver that. But that's just one point and one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is from product perspective. So please, there is no Salesforce developer. Look for a Commerce Cloud developer. Look for an Apex developer. Look for a Visualforce developer. Look for a Core Cloud developer if you think that you need Visualforce, Aura, LWC, and Apex and Flow at the same time. There are also other products, we will go there in a few minutes, basically saying, well, there's also Commerce Cloud, there's MuleSoft, there's Einstein, there's Marketing Cloud, and a few other clouds, and all of them have their own development tools and even DevOps tools.
So, as we could probably know from what we've just talked about, Salesforce development is constantly changing. We've come a very long way from that no code, no software slogan to what the platform is today. So, who of you here would actually call themselves a Salesforce developer?
Me.
Right. So, which of these products are you developing on? Yes? MuleSoft, okay. Okay. Heroku? Velocity, okay. Steelbrick, right. Who of you does not know any of these products? From a development perspective, yes. Okay, well, no shame in that, because, please, this is what Salesforce has made of those. Like, over the years, and there's not even all of them on there, over the years there have been so many acquisitions because obviously the demand was there from a business perspective. Salesforce started out in sales, what it was, a sales tool. And I still remember the days when we started selling Salesforce, knocking on doors, telling people that we were selling on-demand solutions, right? Customizing them, demoing them to the customer, and those customers could then immediately start working once the trial was up. Some things haven't changed. You still get to have like a 30-day free trial, but you will not have the finished product once the trial is over. So we do have customized demos and demo environments. We do have all these products now, and some of them, and I apologize, aren't even up to date anymore. We know that Salesforce changes quite frequently and merges them into different product options. But just so you know, most of them aren't even on platform. So for somebody who comes from a Salesforce platform core development environment, moving into ExactTarget, what's now Marketing Cloud, is a completely different monster to tackle. So you thought you knew, but maybe you don't. So this is one more time to reiterate why it is so important to communicate your requirements clearly, ask your customer the right question, and figure out who you're actually really looking for. Has it given up on us?
So we have made the point of the platform constantly growing. But not only is the platform growing, or why is the platform growing? Because customer needs are growing, and because the ecosystem is growing. And Salesforce tries to address these things on several levels. And I just put you a few charts on there to give you an idea what the story is that Salesforce is telling. The story is basically here in the upper right, saying, okay, we're growing fast, and we lead a lot of people to do that. And you can read up on it and trail it, actually. And one of the negative things that we developers perceive from Salesforce is there's so much marketing, and they change so many names, and they do this, they do that, and all of the same time. Yes, they do, but they never change the message. They change the labels, but they will not change the message. The message has been here for 20 years, and the message still is citizen developers. So people who have not started their career in tech, but get enabled by a beautiful software like Salesforce Core to do some kind of configuration to add business value by learning new tools and simple tools and by making it accessible. And I know that we as hardcore developers sometimes have a hard time with the clicks versus code debate, but nonetheless, if you look at these skill gap figures we're seeing here, especially down there, then you see half of all the companies say we don't have enough experience and enough experienced people to build stuff. So it's pretty logic to say, let's make it easier to build stuff. And if Salesforce succeeds or not, that's something you will find out in your projects.
So Salesforce Development is really customizing of software as a service products, isn't it? We have found out that, well, from, like we said, the very beginnings, Salesforce has pretty much made the conscious decision in 2006 to open up Salesforce to the App Exchange. So that was the first time where Salesforce allowed partners to extend Salesforce core functionality on the platform. And it was a short while later that Salesforce also decided that it was okay to expose certain parts of their code for people to actually add on to that. So that's when Apex was released into the wild, so to speak. So what we can see now, like the things that have been happening there and the developing that we're doing is in the constraints of the platform. So are we actually even really developing? The question is, if what we are doing is only basically customizing an existing product, why are we so focused on finding developers and building new developer resources?
Because at the one hand, as you just rightly pointed out, Salesforce Development is, and excuse me, I do not want to offend you, but Salesforce Development is trivial. Why is it trivial? Because we don't need to drill down into security issues, database issues, caching issues, all sorts of issues that you need to register, reflect, and solve if you're building enterprise-grade software. And that's the little thingy. We're not building software for our home. We're not building software for our family. We're not even building software for our family business, which is small and tiny and works, right? We're building enterprise-grade software. And to the story that it's just configuration of a software as a preferred service product, yes, that's true. But at the same time, you find people like Matthew Frank, who says, learn Apex, it will change your life. And why is that? And why do I think that is really, really true? Because time to value on the platform is amazing. I know everyone here has hit their head against this wall or the wall that back there, right? But in comparison to development times of enterprise software that do not start on any kind of platform, we're really on the green field and really happy and really, really, really speedy. This brings us to another point. So once again, we're configuring, so to say, by code, by writing code, obviously, but all within the constraints of Salesforce. And you all know that Salesforce is limited, and you all have heard about bulkification and CPU time limits on core platform, and I'm certain that Demandware has also some crazy boundaries where you can bang your head against. In the end, the picture is a little bigger, because there's not only technical constraints, there are also license and legal constraints. So you cannot put everything in your org or serve everything in your org, because you signed a contract. There's also financial limits of what you can do. Basically, Salesforce is not the cheapest product out there, so you have a budget and need to figure out what you can do and you cannot do. Little remark, if you have to have licenses to do something, don't hire a developer to make it work, right? That's just a breach of contract. It might be that you feel heroic, but you aren't. I'm sorry. I mean, that's not the deal here. And within the limits, as we say, be creative and as creative as you want, but be aware that you have technical limits, financial limits, because a new feature costs stuff, and there are legal limits because you can't do everything with a feature. So if you go into Salesforce implementation and someone says, platform licenses, what do you say? No. Why do we say that? Because the standard platform license is limited to 10 custom objects. Would you think that 10 custom objects are sufficient for enterprise implementation? No, they're not. They're just one of those price tags that business people see, and they see, oh, it's way cheaper. And then you do your project, your implementation, and all of a sudden you get an email by your account executive saying, hey, hello, you're in breach of contract. Let's renegotiate. And that's also one of the ways in which Salesforce Development hits the product line. And two things are really, really important here for me. First of all, we're now 20 years into Salesforce. We've had Apex for over 10 years. We had change sets and deployments for over 10 years. And yes, there are pains there. And yes, there are rough edges there. And yes, there are even gaps there. But please, do not think that Salesforce will address them. They won't. It doesn't make sense for them commercially. It doesn't make sense for them in terms of roadmap. So if you're really, really feeling the pain of gaps in a metadata API, welcome to our world. That's our world. It will not change. And another important thing to me is to understand that the limits are also designed to bring us into buying more. So to say, if you can't do enough with cases in Sales Cloud, well, obviously it makes a lot of sense to buy Service Cloud. And obviously, Salesforce will never go in there and give you lots of case functionality in Sales Cloud, because the idea is to buy Service Cloud. And if you want to do more than standard reports do, well, you have a huge analytics engine on the platform, which you can use as well. Or if you're really into adoption, then you can use Salesforce Shield and event monitoring and find out where your users click, how often and when, but it costs you. So you will have to make a conscious decision. That being said, I'm now over 8 years on the platform, and something that has changed dramatically in a positive way is development experience. So we as developers have a good time because documentation in comparison to other technologies, I'm talking about Microsoft, Google, AWS, is awesome. You have been working, so once again, Philip Ozil, thank you so much for your work on public repositories where we have example apps, where we can learn the ropes. Thank you for ready-to-use recipes available, like the Apex recipes. Those weren't there when I started. You had to go into those gruesome developer forums and try to find out if somebody has already solved the problem. A revelation to me was always Salesforce Stack Exchange, because there's really great people there who pose great questions and answer great questions, and it's self-moderated, so we will always be on the lookout that posts are high quality, the questions are high quality, otherwise we educate people. So they ask high quality questions and get high quality answers. There are by now established frameworks. There are blogs, podcasts, videos, not only by Salesforce, but also from amazing community people like Ankit over there, or Matthias, Christian, Narendra. Thank you so much. And last but not least, since I think 2016, we have some movement in development tooling, which is great because it's not proprietarily Salesforce. The X plugins is TypeScript. And basically, they're open to be improved by everyone. So that's where the gaps that Salesforce will not close can maybe closed by us, by working on the X plugins, by open sourcing them and telling people, look, I solved the pain with assignment rules and I don't know what. The last part, Node in TypeScript, is something, it's a little bit, So actually we're Salesforce developers, and we do Visualforce and LWC, or maybe Marketing Cloud and data extensions. But what did Salesforce do to us? They made us, nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, into JavaScript developers. Everyone who's now doing a DX development project is actually living inside a Node project. So if you don't know the ropes of Node, you will not go deeper into development tooling, because that's what it is built like. And whereas I like it because it's standard and open source and everyone else uses it, The problem is we didn't in the last 5 to 10 years. So now I need to learn a lot about NPM and packaging and how does gist work and how do I wire up a JavaScript project. And hell, I left Salesforce to, I went to Salesforce to not do that stuff, right? So I was empowered by the platform, and I still feel empowered by being able to not to use a lot of local tooling, and that doesn't work or not the way it expects. And I'm a Windows user, right? So I have a long streak of pain there. Oh, yeah. But that's the downside. We've come a great way with development and development tools and VS Code and documentation. And I told you that's not the whole of the story. We also have people who are responsible for making user happy by bringing the features that a renderer built to the users that use them. And here we are coagulating towards what I told you earlier. Salesforce will not fix these things. Hence, obviously, Caro says, as a business user, what do you say?
Excuse me? We can do full copy sandboxes, but we cannot copy it the same way back.
So just think about it, right? You get full copy sandboxes by a click. All data is replicated. All functionality is replicated. But you can't do it the other way around. OK, nice. What's the next evolution of change sets? Now I know there might be very well, you might be a fan of change sets, you might not be a fan of change set, but I think they're pretty revolutionary because it enables people with no technical background to move features. And yes, it's painful, but it's not, well, it's painful, but if you...
It is painful.
If you follow a very simple process, and this simple process can be trained to anyone. It's my perfect opinion. It's write a list, be very exact in that list writing, and if you're done, then you go through your list and you do your change set. And I know in Sandbox 2 you will do it again and again. Yes, you will. But the other side is building up a CI tool chain, which means you need experts in metadata. You need tools maybe because it's too much for one person in a huge enterprise. So the Askir said there's Copado, there's even DevOps Center by Salesforce now. But those things are great to us developers, maybe not so great to business users because they're really hard to explain. And really, so you need a GitHub account or some sort of tooling, and there are certain processes you find, and that's really difficult to explain, and you need an expert to build it and maintain it, and that's actually not the way we want it with Salesforce, is it?
No, it's not, because also we do not want to have all these additional products, right? I mean, we want it to be on platform. Nobody ever told us that we have to go out and buy a third-party tool. It is really expensive. The resources to have to run it is expensive. And you know what? Maybe I just did not want to create a whole new IT department. I just wanted a sales tool. So yeah, but one thing to say to change that as well is it helped me to also deploy. Like, I mean, you know, it's like change sets I can use because I know it's self-explanatory. I can deal with it. I know that I have to, like Szandor said, I have to redo some of the things in my target org, but I would now say everybody can do it, right? For setting up a pipeline, integrating, like setting up your branches, whatever. Like this is already too deep for me. Like I have done it, I have tried it. I had more gray hair afterwards than I did before because, you know, you have to go into all these different script languages I do not know anything about and I don't want to be honest. So I really do love my change sets. But, you know, one thing is, and I have this discussion a lot, well, you know, if deployment takes such a long time, why do we not just do it in production? Yeah. And you know, it's like, and I have to explain to my customers over and over again that yes, you will have to allocate a certain time for deployments. That's just the way it is. But you do not build it on production. Like you get enough errors after deployment as it is. Why would you go down that dark tunnel? Like, but still, you know, we all know our customers, they will still do it. You will still find differences between your developments and production orgs. But yeah. That's why we love them, isn't it?
before I skip to the next slide, just give me the room to explain the last 4 bullet points. So that's my subjective experience for the last few years. So I was really keen on org shapes. I won't go into details now. If you're interested, come talk to us. It just didn't happen. I was very keen on snapshot orgs, which is somewhat like do full copy sandbox kind of thing. Didn't happen in years. And that's why I think we need to be very open about what is the relation to the mother company and what can we expect and what we cannot expect. And it will always be the case that a business priority, a new business priority, will win over those old things. The metadata API is a huge piece of software which needs lots of experts, and all the experts Salesforce has are basically busy maintaining that stuff. And they would need probably more experts to revamp it. And if they revamp it, then they need to roll it out. And you see it gets just more expensive and more expensive even for us, because we then need to migrate or do this and that and that. Hence, it probably will not get any better anytime. And today, we know that DevOps Center, so the CI tool from Salesforce, is going to public beta. We know about that it will be extensible, so that Salesforce will not build all functionality, but there will be partners and individuals who will extend DevOps Center, and maybe we will get a decent CI or even CD, means continuous delivery pipeline. The most important thing is, over many of those truths, is the last point. In Salesforce, we're tenants, not proprietors. So we can do only so much, and we're completely dependent on our proprietor.
So with all these points, Salesforce development is best close to business end users. So what does that mean? Like, we found that especially with larger implementations where there's big implementation and delivery teams, there is a disconnect between those people that do the actual work behind the scenes and the people who give us the requirements and the money to do what we need for them to have these requirements built. So what we mean here is development is an integral part of the solution design, and we need to start earlier to talk with each other. While that does not mean that you have to leave your development sphere, it should mean that you do understand and get involved in what it is that we're actually building. You are allowed to ask questions, and I've found that with most of the projects, or some of the projects that I do, developers feel that they cannot approach the project management or the business users or, the product owners to ask for clarification or to even understand what it is they're supposed to be building. Like, they're mostly seen as, the guys in the dark little room that do their magic, and then out comes, the blinking thing or the shiny thing that we ask them to build. This is not the case. That's the disconnect. Ask the questions. If somebody comes up and says, okay, you just built me this authentication piece of software, you're going to go, well, yeah, I can do that. 99.9% of the times, it will do what you were told it should be doing, but it's not going to work. So what does that do? It's dissatisfaction. People will get upset. The project is going to be more expensive. And I just urge you, like, from that project management, product owner, business architect point of view, ask the uncomfortable questions. Really do. And if people tell you, oh, you're the developer, you should know that, just tell them, no, I'm not a magician. I do not know that. If you cannot answer the question, we should not be able to build that. So it's always good to understand the big picture. If you make them uncomfortable with your question, good, because that means we have not done our jobs, in the front, working with the users, establishing the processes, finding out what it really is that they need. And we also need a better partnership with our developers, and that's something that we can drive from both sides. Like, I've found whenever I sit down with one of my developers and ask them for their opinion, I get much more out of it than when I just go and say, okay, I need you to do this. Because if you understand what you're building out, like what the enterprise is all about, and what the business is, then we can build a product that the customer is actually happy with. We have way less rework to do, and also you as developers and me as the person who has to deal with the customer will be much more happier with each other.
There's sometimes a little bit of disconnect, I feel, Caroline.
Yes.
In terms of that, maybe I'm wrong, but I often feel then when talking to business people, we're talking about the good case, right? And there's one good case. But there's faulty case 1, faulty case 2, faulty case 3, faulty case 5, faulty case 6, and 7, right? And I sometimes wish you would pay closer attention to what we are saying. I think one of the great examples yesterday while we discussed this talk was, what about values missing? Right, so you want to calculate something, or you have a business process that depends on 3 fields or 3 checkpoints, and one of them is missing. So the fail cases are to us developers very, very dear at heart, because we want to know, do I need to surface an error message? And you say, no, error messages for my end users.
No.
Well, then I need to send you an email maybe, or whatever is necessary. And then there's also some things where I say, that's fundamental. Let's say we want to calculate something. Mm-hmm. And obviously you need some values, and maybe you do a division. And your divisor is 0.
Wow.
And then there's the question, what would you like? And then the question is, as we discussed yesterday, you don't need to remember that, but programming languages deal division by 0 differently. Apex will raise an error and say, no, you can't do that. JavaScript will say, yes, you can, and the result is infinity. And now, think about any business money value that you multiply with infinity.
It's awesome.
Well, it's more infinity, and you're super rich, but no one is going to pay you.
Only on paper. Like, if you work in financial services, they're going to love you. But as long as, you don't tell them it's an error.
And to us, we should also think about limits I explained earlier. So we're on a limited platform. So that means if a banking customer, a financial services customer comes to me, then one of the first questions I will ask is, how many digits do you need to calculate? Because if you need more than, let's say, 18 digits, then Salesforce is not for you, right? It's just not for you. And there are cases I've learned where there are a lot of money going through a business, and tiny changes in percentages make a lot of money. And now just assume you cannot save those numbers into your database. Well, I think the shit's going to hit the fan.
Yeah.
Massively.
Yeah, you could. Financial reporting is way off, and there's nothing better than a CEO of a large bank calling you at 6 a.m. going like, where is these 200 million that I just had in my account, like, on Friday?
Well, here's another not so nice truth. We are a bottleneck. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid that is so. So from a project management point of view, Salesforce Development is usually what we call the bottleneck. But, be honest with yourself. Who of you has felt like this?
Well, there's no one there. Sorry. There's your team.
No.
No? Where's the person?
Well, that's what I was wondering. Like, where are you in this? Like, you're like drowning in all of this different hats and different things that people throw at you.
Yeah, please do a pull request. Can you review that? Can you please talk to the product owner about X, Y, and Z? Oh, a pipeline is failing. Can you have a look? We just have a go live on another instance. There's 2 error messages.
Yeah.
And how do we deal with that?
Well, I'm going to my developer and say, can you please fix that?
That's probably going to scale very well.
Why?
Because, see, a developer is not a genius in everything that is technology. Usually, we sit down and learn something for years until we really, really master it. And if you call me now to a CI pipeline I haven't touched ever, like in, Circle CI plus YAML plus a little bit of shell script, and I built LDBC the last 2 years. How exact? Oh, maybe I can give you the translation of the Bible in Hebrew, and you will give me back the favorite parts in like 2 minutes because I have a talk.
That is very disappointing. So,
Sorry.
you know, and that's actually the thing. And these kind of conversations happen a lot, and much more than we'd actually like. Because what does that mean? The developer is sitting at his desk going like, oh my God, there she is again. And I'm going there like, listen, like all of my users, they have this ugly error message, and all of my customers, they cannot go through their journey. And you know what? Like the backend is also not integrated anymore. The data is not getting there. Stress, you know? I see the money ticking by, and you go like, yeah, but still, you know, I'm working on this sprint, and I really need to get it done. Whose fault is that? And I have to? Yes. Yeah, we will find somebody whose fault that is. But I have to admit, it's mine. Like, I have to really sit down and say, okay, like we said earlier, I have to understand whose expertise is what. And if I staff my projects, and I think that I have my developer resource, there's one person who can save my whole project, please do never be sick, and if you are, we'll still call you anyway. It's not gonna happen. So what we really have to do is we have to sit down, communicate, talk about it. What are the expectations that I have? What are the expectations that I'm meeting or not meeting? And the most important thing is, I ask my developers to say no. No is a complete sentence, and I have to find a way around it. You know, that no to me means I can mitigate. I can go and find a different way. I can find a colleague. If you know somebody, let me know, because to be honest, you guys are the rarest thing in the market right now. But yeah, that's the thing. So we need to communicate clearly as to what I can do. What is my responsibility? What is not my responsibility? I cannot be responsible for bug fixing while I'm working to get a sprint live, to get a release live. And Szandor said something to me that was very, very important as well. My goodness, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to concentrate, I'm in the middle of this. Please do not come talk to me, because I'm gonna lose my train of thought and I will have to start from the top. Yeah. So thank you so much. Yes.
My life.
I will keep that in mind, because, you know, I mean, with remote working, this has changed a little bit. When we were all still sitting in the same room, it's easy to just walk over and go, you know, Szandor, I need some information. Like, exactly. There is this error message popping up. Why is this happening? So yeah, what I took away from this when we prepared for this and we discussed it is we need to obviously set boundaries, figure out who does what, and scale accordingly. But in order to do so, it's a two-way street. Learn your nose. And it's sometimes, if it's a harsher, please go away, it's also fine.
Maybe to add something to that from developer perspective, time is money. So learn to say no early on.
Yes.
Because, and that's something, I mean, it's always a question of role. Who is responsible for what? And that we can't answer for you, because teams are different. And sometimes you have an architect and a designer and a developer. Sometimes you just have some business people and a developer. And hence there's no answer that fits all. But the earlier you detect roadblocks, and that's not only about development, it's about any business project. The earlier you detect roadblocks and find out if you can go around them or if they're really a dead end, the better for your purse, right? So you don't waste money on something that will never achieve a grade of serious going life. Well, we have kind of negative attitude today, don't we?
No, we are good.
Let's go to the positive parts then, because once again, Salesforce has for a long time now realized that there is a gap in people and that we need more resources. And one of the great things they decided to do is make learning completely free. And not only that, it is high quality learning. So since day one, and that's still something that other industries do not do. So for example, if I want to try out specific Google APIs, I need to first sign a contract with Google. So I need to be a real user to play and fool around with specific things. That might be the case because it's in the nature of whatever there is. So I shouldn't be putting ads anywhere on the website without being a paying customer and know my ropes, right? Okay, I understand that. But nonetheless, Salesforce is different. Since day one, since I started, there was a free Salesforce Developer org, and I keep that forever, for free. Right? Other people pay 100 euros per license in Salesforce. I keep that for free. If you want to have an SAP sandbox, depending on what SAP version you're on, you're asked to put money on the table. There are a few ISVs. There are a few really, really nasty ISVs that ask additional license cost money if you want to use their product in the sandbox. Yep. And once again, Salesforce gives us most of the feature, core-wise, for free to work on them in a developer org. That includes Einstein, that includes flows, obviously, Service Cloud, but a lot of things that you can just switch on, try out, and learn about it. There's obviously Trailhead. You have your local community here in Amsterdam, in Munich, all over the place. If you're not yet a community member, please go onto the internet, trailblazercommunitygroups.com, and find out if there's anything you can watch and visit, because you will talk to famous people like Caroline and get a little bit of exchange. We have, once again, open source repositories over the last 4 years. They've grown massively. I know that we still have some issues in the terms of, okay, we have no packaging, and like NPM has, so we can't dynamically get stuff and build something out of it. In Salesforce, you own all the code, because all the code needs to be present in the org. But there are open source repositories for Flonatics, obviously for the X plugins, for frameworks like the Financial Force lib, that was really, really great. But by now, with changes on the platform, with better SOCL queries that can deal with security better, we will certainly see a few new frameworks coming up, and I'm looking forward to that. And there's so much for. And let's now come, because we're running out of time, to the very, very last point of our presentation. Salesforce development is fun, ladies and gentlemen.
Everybody's looking at me. I would say 2 sentences about this, because to be honest, in my career, I've also tried my hand at learning how to develop in Salesforce. Like, I've done the Red Women. I don't know if you know it. I love it. It's awesome. It's the supportive community of women who teach other women how to code. Interesting, but it nearly cost me more of my hair. So it is very interesting. I thought it was a very good resource to learn. Also, I've looked at David Kalu's 99, what is it? Yeah, something. But it's just not for me. I mean, it was fun, right? The first time you get this success merit message in your VS Code, it's like, oh my God, I am great. And then it's like, well, what does that do now? It creates my shopping list. Okay, it's probably not so helpful in the business environment, but it is fun, and I try to get people onto developing onto Salesforce development to use also these resources. And to be really honest, I appreciate that even the develop community has embraced me so kindly, even though I do not have that development background. Like, I did it to understand. It was fun, but it's, not what I excel at.
Let me ask you a question, though. Have you built a workflow and workflow rules?
Oh, yes, I have.
Have you built maybe a custom field and some validation?
Yes, I have.
Have you maybe even touched some flows?
Oh, God, yes, I have.
So wasn't that fun?
Except for the flows, it was awesome.
So that's the thing. See, development on the platform is a huge topic, and you don't need to write code for it. We know that. Hence, if you felt empowered by saying, I do a click here, a click there, and then this salesperson cannot do that kind of thing ever again, so-called validation rule.
Love them.
See, then you know that Salesforce development can actually be fun. Depending on which level you are, obviously, but everyone can start. And even without a single line of code. For me, it's important, you can read that for yourselves, right? There are obviously things that we mentioned. Everything is constantly changing. You need to be, and that's one of 2 important takeaways, you need to be a learner. Because as we saw with all these new additions, there's always coming something new up. yes, you need to be a learner, but we don't need to have like brains that are 3 meters in diameter. So you can't learn 20 years of enterprise product software documentation and keep it in your head. So we will always relearn that stuff. You built LWC 6 weeks ago, now you start again, you refresh. You haven't touched Apex in a few weeks or months, you refresh. You get something new on the platform, you go on Trailhead, you go on documentation, you go on a developer org, you try and learn or relearn. And you need to be a little bit patient because Salesforce has obviously some rough edges, and as we learned today, those will not be fixed ever. And the last thing, the little circly thing, is that's something that I would love to talk to business about eye to eye, namely, well, we need to embrace those hard truths in order to get our job done. And we can't change the platform, and you can't change the platform. No. I can't change the code, but you can change the requirements.
That's true.
And with that, we are into Q&A. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, please.
1 second, you need to speak into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries, thank you.
I can speak very loudly.
Yeah.
Who do you gather in the team should make the decision on build? Yeah, that both of you. maybe two answers on writing code or versus decorative development. Who should make the decision? Not how, but who should be responsible of that?
I need to know more about your story or the actual requirement, but because there's no one-size-fits-all answer. I need to know what the use case is, and then I will tell you, okay, you can go 80% with Flow, but the last 20% are not supported or need custom development. Or I say, we can go 50% custom development, and the other 50% go with Flow. But I can't give you a general answer. And in terms of who should be making those decisions, I think, given that the platform is huge, we cannot know everything all at once. We need a team of people who discuss and learn and maybe even take a day to revisit documentation and revisit whatever is needed to then reconvene on day 2 and make an informed decision. An informed decision might mean that you need to take your homework back. And you cannot make a decision right now. And that's sometimes business people, I feel, don't like at all. Yeah, well, and I'm not, sorry, I mean, the amount of technology we need to have in our heads is Lord of the Rings, plus Tolstoy, plus 6 times the Bible, and you want me to make an instant call right now. And that works with great people, but we stratify people, so maybe we all do better if we take our homework home, do it, and then make a decision.
I will answer your question offline. Time's up. Thank you, everyone, so much for attending. You have been great.